Last month during dinner time, our power went out in our house. Has that ever happened to you? It was the worst because it was dark outside, right? And I couldn't see anything, and I didn't have my phone with me, to use as a flashlight. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna go get the actual flashlight from the junk drawer just a few feet away from where I was. You know which drawer I'm talking about, right? The drawer with all the random stuff you need like every 4 months, It's got super glue, a key that no one knows what opens, leftover Cheetos, and Polynesian sauce from Chick-fil-A, of course. So I get up and I take what I think is a totally safe step. And I end up kicking a stool like as hard as I possibly could. You can imagine how that felt on my toe. It like hurt so stinking bad. And obviously, I couldn't see it, but based on the pain I was experiencing, I was pretty sure that my pinky toe was ripped off. So that happens, and while I'm trying to keep from crying like a baby, I moved the stool to where the drawer was, and here's where I make a second mistake. I opened it and reached in, totally forgetting about the overhanging cabinet above. And that's when I drilled my head on the corner of the cabinet, resulting in the loss of, I would imagine, roughly 4,000 brain cells. But the good news, I did eventually find the flashlight. Bad news is there were no batteries in it. So at that point, I pretty much just wanted to quit life. So the idea of walking around in the darkness, that's a picture I want you to think about today. Because I think that's what life looks like sometimes. And I'm not just talking about when the electricity goes out. I'm talking about like way worse situations that make us feel like we're walking around in darkness. Life can feel dark sometimes. It can feel dark on a global level, whether that's a terrorist attack in Europe or a mass shooting in the United States. These are events that feel awful whether we live there or not. Or life can feel dark on a local level, like a devastating storm, a terrible car crash, or the death of a teacher or a classmate. It can make an entire town feel like it's just grieving together, Or life can seem dark on a personal level. And these tragedies, they can hit the hardest. Like our parents' divorce, the loss of a grandparent, the unexpected news that we have to move to another town, a year where you felt alone, a breakup that broke your heart, or a failure that you think has ruined your life. That's darkness. That's what I'm talking about. And it affects all of us in some way. And it's tricky because we don't really have a manual for how to handle times of darkness. We know how to deal with happy times, right? Like we know what to do when we win, we know what to do with accomplishments, we know what to do with compliments, good days, lucky breaks. We were taught to say thank you after a compliment and shake the other team's hand after a win. But what about tragedies? Like what about terrorist attacks and floods and tornadoes and car accidents and cancer and divorce? Most of us were never taught what to do with them. In fact, most of us grew up in families that avoided the subject, pretending like a tragedy is never gonna happen, or at least not to us. And that's why when darkness does come our way, the hardest thing is knowing what to do, like knowing what steps to take. There's no script telling us what we should say or how we should react or how long it will take to get through it. There's no guide for going through these times or for helping our friends through them. And so we simply do what feels most natural. We cover it up. Like we watch movies, play video games, party harder, or look for something else to distract us. Or we tune it out. We simply try to pretend that nothing happened. We try to not feel anything until we just feel better. We will talk about anything other than what has actually happened, and we pretend, everything's okay when it's really not. Or some of us do this, we lash out. You know what I'm saying? Like we get angry. We may even get destructive or vengeful towards others or ourselves. Believe it or not, all of these are pretty natural reactions to tragedies or times of darkness. So if you're feeling any of those things, there's nothing wrong with you. But here's the deal. If those are your first steps when you're in darkness, chances are your story is gonna sound a lot like mine when the power went out. Those reactions pretty much ensure that we're gonna end up stubbing our toe or slamming our head, so to speak. So today, and for the next few weeks, we wanna help you navigate the darkness and even help you help your friends navigate it as well. And today is about the first and most important step that you or one of your friends needs to take. Just like when the power goes out at your house and you can't see, that first step, man, that's not only one of the toughest to take, but it's also the most crucial. And I think if you can take the first right step, you're going to navigate the darkness really well. And the first step has to do with our feelings. Think about the last time you found yourself in a darkness kind of situation. What did you feel? And if I had to guess, I would say that you felt alone, or frustrated, or hurt, or misunderstood, maybe desperate, scared. And in the story that we're going to look at today, the people were feeling all of those things too. And since, like we said, we don't have a guidebook for how to manage times like these, we're going to look at a story in the Bible that lets us know that we aren't alone in feeling the way that we do. And I think it's going to help us know how to navigate the darkness. Now, the Bible doesn't necessarily give us a simple 3-step process to feel better, but the Bible does give us real-life examples of people in tragedy that show us how they handled it. And knowing we aren't alone in how we feel is always a good thing. So we're going to look at a story today that was recorded by a man named John, who was one of Jesus' closest friends. And the story starts like this. Now, a man named Lazarus was sick. He was from Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. This Mary, whose brother Lazarus now lay sick, was the same one who poured perfume on the Lord and wiped his feet with her hair. So the sisters sent word to Jesus, "Lord, the one you love is sick." Now, just from reading these few verses, we see that Lazarus was no ordinary guy. He wasn't a random dude trying to track down Jesus. There was a friendship and a closeness between Jesus and Lazarus' family. Even his sisters, when talking to Jesus, they refer to Lazarus as the one you love. So we're talking about one of Jesus' best friends coming down with a major sickness. Not just a cold or a stomach bug, but like a devastating illness. So the point is, Mary and Martha and Lazarus have stumbled into a darkness moment. It's not looking good. And the story continues. On his arrival, Jesus found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb for 4 days. Now, Bethany was less than 2 miles from Jerusalem, and many Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them in the loss of their brother. And when Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went out to meet him, but Mary stayed at home. So Jesus was late. Did you catch that? Like, he missed it. And what was a darkness situation, it turned into a tragedy. I mean, like, total blackout. And you can imagine the emotions they were feeling: sadness, anger, frustration, to say the least. And it was because Jesus was late. So Martha decided to confront Jesus about it. When she heard Jesus had finally arrived, she went out to meet him, and as soon as she saw him, she told him exactly what she thought. "Lord," Martha said to Jesus, "if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Gloves off, brutal honesty, raw emotion. Where were you? I thought you loved him. How could you let this happen? Where have you been? And it's like, wow, is that even allowed? Can you talk to Jesus that way? Like, what's he gonna do? Is he gonna lecture her here? Is he gonna tune her out? Is he gonna put her in her place? Is he gonna ignore her and brush her aside? Is he gonna tell her to get it together? No, none of those. Check out what he does next, because it's step number 1 in handling darkness. It was step number 1 for Martha, and it will be step number 1 for you whenever you find yourself in a darkness moment. When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. "Where have you laid him?" he asked. "Come and see, Lord," they replied. Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." Jesus didn't tune out the pain or dismiss it. He wasn't annoyed by it, offended by it, or impatient with it. No, he embraced it. He joined Martha in it. He hurt too. He cried too. He mourned too, because when you're in darkness trying to figure out where to go, that's step 1. Before you can heal, you have to feel. Like, you need to honestly express and process your emotions. That you need to feel. Now, the story of Lazarus, it doesn't end there. In fact, Lazarus' family eventually witnessed a miracle when Jesus raised Lazarus back to life. But I think it's really interesting that Jesus performed the miracle after he went to the tomb. Jesus didn't just show up on the scene and immediately, fix everything. He didn't brush aside the sadness or the anger. He didn't rush through the darkness just to get to the other side. He didn't bypass the emotion. Jesus knew that before you heal, you have to feel. And you guys, that's why this story is so important for us. In times of darkness, the most common and most important question is, what do we do now? Well, in the story of Lazarus, we see that step 1 was to grieve, to feel, that it's okay to do that, because that's what Jesus did. He wept and he grieved. He was sad. He experienced the pain. He didn't try to run away or rush through it. He felt it. And he allowed Mary and Martha to do the same thing. And if you don't take that first step, I'm telling you, you're going to stub your toe or you're going to bang your head and things are going to get worse. And Jesus knew that. And that's why when darkness comes, you'll find him ready to grieve with you. So if you're in darkness now, or whenever you find yourself there, or if you know someone who is in darkness right now, this is what you can do, or this is what you can encourage someone else to do. Move towards the feelings. Move towards the feelings. Name them, express them, own them. Don't be ashamed or apologetic. Step towards them. It's okay to be sad and angry and confused and torn up. And if it was okay for Jesus, it's okay for you. So move towards those feelings. Talk about them with your parents or your small group leader or your pastor. Don't try to cover it up or tune it out. Move towards your feelings. And second, move towards Jesus. Bring your feelings to Jesus. He's not going to be offended or annoyed or uncaring. No way. That's not who he is. He's ready to hurt and cry and struggle with you. And this is very important, he's ready to comfort you because he's your Savior and he will never leave you hanging. So talk to God, be real with him, and in so doing, you'll move towards him. And when you do, remember, his first instinct with life's darkness was to feel it as well. He's not mad that you're not over it yet. He's hurting with you. He's feeling with you. He's experiencing this hurt with you. So guys, as you head out today, I want you to think about where the darkness is in your world right now. Maybe it's something you've experienced that still hurts, or maybe your family is right in the middle of it and you kind of feel like this message was for you. Or maybe you have a friend walking through a dark time and you have no idea how to help. I mean, no matter what your situation is, the reality is this: all people eventually go through darkness. And sometimes it's going to feel like our world is falling apart. But the first step we got to take is to be honest about the hurt and the pain. Because if you want to heal, you got to feel. And when we take this step to openly acknowledge our pain, we will also take a step towards Jesus, who is always ready to meet us and comfort us right where we are.